Welcome to the MLB Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden. Taking a look at tonight's slate on FanDuel and DraftKings. Not a bad slate here. Pitching seems pretty straightforward. We got ourselves cores. We do have Ohtani pitching tonight, which is always fun.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting pitching options once you get outside of a couple of the chalk guys and some interesting stacks. And I don't know, I might be a little bit too busy to go through this entire podcast. I have to go through and delete all my burner accounts. So like if I'm distracted while we're recording, that's why.
Yeah, like DF Cafe, we're always a fairly open, company. We have zero burner accounts. There's not Cafe Lover 92 or anything like that floating around out there. So you can trust us.
I have 5 burner accounts that I use to troll lineup sellers. So like I do have to go and make those private.
Do you feel like you've used Ohtani a lot this year, pitching wise?
No, I actually only done it once.
Like I think he's always on Sundays or like day games, and it's like really like small slates, and I take Sundays off. So I feel like I haven't used him this year.
I've done it once, and that's it. I think it was the Oakland start, maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it feels nice to actually have him on the slate to be able to use. We also have Scherzer and Paxton here tonight, but let's dive in here. Chicago and Pittsburgh. Joe Musgrove versus Kyle Hendricks. Joe Musgrove looked really good in that 2018 debut. Obviously, a guy with a lot of talent.
Yeah, he really is. He's a guy I've been a huge fan of since basically he came up, and like I actually kind of like him in this spot going against the Cubs. Like obviously he's in a good park. Weather a little bit of a concern here, but like the way he was mixing his pitches, he looked so good in that last start, and like the velocity was up, which was really, really good to see. He was mixing in a cutter, which is something that he hasn't really shown off that much in the past. And like the efficiency, I mean, going 7 innings with only 67 pitches, pretty insane. Like he's an interesting value option on this slate against a Cubs offense that, as I mentioned yesterday, sometimes going against these guys they haven't seen a whole lot of, they do tend to struggle.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like at that price tag too, 6,900. I don't mind targeting him here. Pretty big ballpark. Vegas doesn't have the Cubs projected for too high of a run total. 4.3. I definitely think you can take a shot here in GPPs.
Yeah, I think he's definitely worth a shot. On the flip side, I think Hendricks is worth a shot as well. Going up against a Pirates offense that we've isn't strikeout prone, but Hendricks isn't really a guy we chase strikeouts with anyways. He's just a consistent pitcher. Goes out and gives you, most nights is going to give you the 20 plus fantasy points on DraftKings.
Yeah, like I think he's more of a cash game guy for me. A guy who's relatively steady floor, never kind of blows up. I think GPPs, I may look a few other directions, but I don't mind them here either because, I mean, really as far as bats go, like I'm not heavily targeting anyone on either side.
No, I'm not really either. Like if I was looking at like Cubs bats, it would be someone like Rizzo, Wilson Contreras, or like Kyle Schwarber. But I'm not terribly intrigued with targeting too many of those guys. And on like the Pirates side, because Hendricks has struggled at times against lefties, it's really tough to overlook Austin Meadows if he gets in the lineup, considering like how freaking hot he's been.
Yeah, he's been crushing the ball. Greg Blanco would be a guy I have some interest in as well. 300 ISO against that changeup that Hendricks throws, quite a bit. Just another lefty, but that's about it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like it looks like they're going to like use Meadows in place of Polanco at times. So like one of the two may not even be in the lineup.
They gotta make a trade here soon.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the move would be.
I don't know. They're loaded. Not a bad problem to have, though.
No, it's really not.
No. Washington, Baltimore here. Yeah, Max Scherzer taking on David Hess. It's nice that the AL East is going with this like half-ass bullpen mixed starter approach.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an interesting approach. Man, like obviously, like this Max coming off that game against the Marlins, I wonder if it's going to deflate his ownership a little bit.
I kind of tend to think so because the price hasn't moved. Like he's 13.9 on DK. It dropped $100. And I think like having Otani and Paxton in these matchups is going to be, I think a lot of people are going to gravitate towards them, and obviously Stripling, who we'll get to. So I tend to think Scherzer won't be as popular, but I mean, it's such a good spot to rack up strikeouts. Like it's a really good bounce back spot.
Yeah, like we've talked about it before, like with Miami, they're not a team that strikes out a ton anyways. So like the 4 strikeouts, not terribly like surprising. Like I would have expected like 6 or 7, but still this on the other side, like on the flip side, feels like a double-digit strikeout game. Like this just feels like a 7, 8 inning, like 13 strikeout performance out of Max. And of course, he's going to give up a home run to like one of the lefties, probably Chris Davis, who has just been terrible this season. But Max is such a good option here. Like if you can afford to pay up for him, go for it.
Yeah, and like it's not killing you to use like him and Stripling here. Like there are some cheap bats to kind of consider on this slate. I'm going to use him. Like I'm going to be sprinkling him in the GPPs. I think Paxton's the way I'm going to be going just to save a couple $1,000. But I mean, Scherzer, I think by far, one of the solid options on this slate.
Yeah, and he should, in theory, be able to get some run support tonight.
Sure as hell hope so. He should. Obviously, it has the guy who relies basically on the fastball slider from what his sample size shows. I definitely don't mind going back to the lefties here. But God, Mark Reynolds continues to crush as well.
Yeah, I like the Nationals stack. There's a few stacks that I'm a little bit higher on, but this is a really good spot for these guys. Like you mentioned, Mark Reynolds. I thought it was kind of crazy they were throwing him in the lineup against righties, but it's paid off for him. And this is a really, really, really good spot. 245 ISO against that 4-seam that Hess is throwing. I obviously the outfielders, Juan Soto and Bryce Harper, in really good spots. We saw Soto put up a really solid outing. Last night has been just really solid outside of like a couple of games since coming up. So I like him. Trey Turner, stolen base potential in this spot. But like I kind of feel like chasing like the value guys like the Sotos and Wilmer Defoes and Michael Taylors.
Yeah, I don't mind those guys. All fairly cheap. Soto's not as cheap as yesterday, but still 3.8 decent. I like Defoe, second base eligibility. All interesting. Like really 1 through 9 here is very much in play, and I like both sides. Like I don't mind going back to Rendon either here. You look at him. I mean, 256 ISO, a lot of righties, 48% fly ball rate. Rendon's gotten going a little bit of late as well.
Yeah, he has. He's starting to heat up, so it's a solid spot for him. And even someone like Michael Taylor, if he's in the lineup, is someone that you can look at. And I'm trying to find him on DraftKings. Where did he go? He's 3,500, so it's a decent spot for him too. And he's been heating up recently.
Yeah. Were you taking any lefty against Scherzer here? No chance Cisco.
No, not for me. No.
LA and Detroit next year. You had Otani taking on Mike Fiers. Otani making the start here. I definitely want some exposure. I think it's for my exposure of I just want to play Otani at least once this year. But also it's a pretty good spot going up against a Tigers team that he should be able to get through here.
Yeah, he should. My only concern is like if the Angels are going to be overly cautious with him. And I mean, coming off, it's been 10 days since he pitched. They pushed his start back once already because of fatigue. It is a very, very, very good spot for him. He is very far from being cash safe. I think tournaments he's fine. Again, I think we just have to exercise some caution with expectations that, if he does come out and show some signs of fatigue early on, or is wild or starts to struggle even a little bit, like the Angels could, have a pretty short leash on him.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think, if you want, you're going to Paxton for $500 more in cash games and Otani a solid GPP. Because obviously, the strikeout stuff has been there this year, over 30% rate, been dominant against both sides of the plate. And this is a Detroit team, they do hit the ball hard, but, there's obviously some strikeouts in this lineup as well.
Yeah, for sure. And just keep an eye on the weather. That could have an impact on this game.
Yeah. No one really stood out to me against Otani today, to you?
No, I'm not going anywhere near him.
No. Other side of this one, I feel like the Angels have been relatively quiet outside of like Mike Trout lately. Um, Fires is a guy who's kind of been on and off. I don't mind some Angels bats here. I feel like they might be a little popular though.
I think a lot of people are gonna chase the Kinsler revenge dong from last night's, and like the Valbuena who double dong last night, and then Maldonado who homered last night. Like, I'm fine if people want to use these guys. Like, if like Upton is super super cheap on DraftKings, like 4K. That's a very very good price for him. Decent numbers against right-handed pitching. We know Fires is a guy that struggles with home runs. My biggest concern after seeing the weather is the fact that the wind's going to be blowing in pretty strong, like 10 to 15 miles an hour. That could have an impact tonight. But like, I definitely don't hate using some of these bats. Cozart's in a really good spot. Like, owns some really really good numbers against that low velocity fastball that Fires is throwing. So I do kind of like Cozart. Kinsler, fine option here too. Man, I don't know if Valbuena would be. I wonder if they would use Valbuena again tonight. Is he projected in the lineup?
He is, yeah, he is for me. Hitting
Yeah.
sixth again.
He'd be a guy, a cheap option. Like, I feel like it would be chasing a little bit, but he'd be an interesting cheap option here.
Yeah, I mean, all these guys, have fairly solid numbers against that fastball. He's only throwing 87 miles an hour this year. I mean, really, outside Trout, 6K. Everyone else is really cheap. Like Cozart, you have the second base, third base eligibility. I don't hate Pujols in this spot as well. Like solid numbers against that low velocity fastball.
Yeah, and don't overlook like Andrelton Simmons, just a decent contact hitter. He's got like an almost 97% contact rate against that fastball.
Yeah, so I feel free. Like that's the team I think that has the most value all around.
Yeah, for sure.
Mets and Braves next year. Julio Teheran versus Jason Vargas. Jason Vargas pitches once every 3 games for the Mets. You might have to actually now with Syndergaard on the DL.
Yeah, and that's probably not a good thing for the Mets. Man, I was all in on the Cubs for tomorrow because they were because Vargas was projected to pitch, and then they moved him up one day, so he's pitching against the Braves, who are one of the best offenses in baseball against left-handed pitching, on short rest, and he's already just been a complete freaking disaster this season. Like, there is absolutely no way this ends well for the Mets. Like, I'm all in on the Braves. Like, everybody, just all in. Like, my entire bankroll going on the Braves tonight.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with like Albies and Freeman, obviously the 2 more expensive guys, but obviously in play like Vargas, over 400 wobble up to both sides to play the hard contacts up. I like the stack as well. Nick Markakis in a really good spot. His numbers against changeups stand out as well here. Obviously decent against sinkers, but changeups, 419 wobble with 256 ISO dating back to 2016. You were digging in a little bit. A guy who's top 15 in RBIs this year.
Yeah, he literally is like he ranks 14th in the majors in RBIs, and it's just kind of crazy to see him up there. He's got 38 RBIs this season, but you mentioned it against that changeup. Vargas was throwing it 23% of the time to lefties. Excellent numbers, 256 ISO, but like, I do like, obviously you love Ozzy Albies and like the Kurt Suzuki's in the spot, but don't overlook the lefties because Vargas is a guy that has really struggled against lefties. So I can't stress it enough. Get exposure to the Braves. Just do it.
Yeah. Like even the bottom of the line, like Kurt Suzuki should be there tonight. It was Flowers yesterday, which kind of made sense because of that late game the night before. Suzuki's obviously a cheap catcher option. I think for me, probably your favorite as well, price considered.
Oh yeah, he's my top catcher option on the slate.
Yeah, but then you have guys like Yohan Camargo. I mean, last year the numbers look solid against lefties. This year, still hitting the ball pretty hard, 38%, just nothing to show for it yet. Dansby Swanson, 269 ISO against lefties this year. Like, there's some cheap bats in the bottom half of this lineup, and I don't know, you may see like a Charlie Culverson or something in the lineup, but all these guys like 1 through 9.
Yeah, and even this Dustin Peterson kid, if he makes the lineup, is someone that you can consider.
Let me see. Oh, I don't know if he's on FanDuel or not. He's back on DK though.
Let me see. I probably got logged out of my FanDuel account again.
Because you were out of the tab for 10 seconds.
Yes. Let's see. Peterson. He is on FanDuel. Woo! Congratulations. He is 2K in
I'm
the
gonna go.
outfield.
I need to go get my burner account and congratulate FanDuel because I'm not doing that for my personal account.
I do it almost every day for my personal account.
Other side of this one, I don't really have interest in Taron, but I don't know how much I'm going to be looking at some of these Mets. Like, typically it's the lefties. It's still the case this year. Like Taron, 45% hard contact to lefties, 48% fly ball rate. I don't mind. Brandon Neal's the guy that I probably just still have the most interest in here.
I will say it is a little concerning. Like Teheran, who has been terrible even like of late, like 5 homers over his past 3 starts. He's given up like 13 runs over that span. Still owns like a 1.55 ERA against in 12 starts against the Mets. Like for some reason, Teheran just owns the Mets. That being said, like the numbers do suggest like that's not going to continue because he does really struggle against lefties, and this is a lineup that can get really left-handed heavy. I mean, you're going to have Nimmo, Asdrubal, Conforto, Jay Bruce, Gonzalez, Guillorme. Like that's a lot of lefties, and if you want to take a shot on on any of them, feel free. I like the top four most. The most like Nemo, Cabrera, Conforto, and Jay Bruce. Those would be the guys that I would focus on. But like Gonzalez heating up a little bit isn't in a terrible spot either.
Oh, and all these guys in a good ballpark for lefty power. Nemo's just been on fire. I mean, this year alone, 454 win with 329 ISO against righties. Cabrera coming off the big night. I hate going back to guys who have like the double dawn game.
I do too, but like it's not out of the realm. Like this is basically what Cabrera's been like. He's just been such a good like solid bat for the majority of the season. So I don't hate using him, and obviously a guy we do like to target against right-handed pitching.
Yeah. Minnesota, Kansas City next year. You have Fernando Romero versus Brad Keller. Brad Keller, 4,600. I feel like he's kind of an interesting SP2 guy, like if he's stretched out long enough here.
Yeah, I just don't know if he's gonna be stretched out. The biggest concern is he's pitching on short rest. I would probably expect like 4, maybe 5 innings. Maybe he gets to like 70 pitches, but that would be stretching it a little bit. I feel like the Twins run total, I don't know if it's gone down. It's gone up since last night. I feel like it's a little bit off here. Like I don't have a lot of interest in picking on Keller here. Like I just don't see like he hasn't been terrible. Like he's really good to both sides of the plate. High ground ball guy, like over 60% of the time. I don't know. I just don't see a whole lot of ways to pick on him tonight.
I don't either. I mean, at most, like, it's like Eddie Rosario. Like, he's always the guy that I just don't mind using for the Twins. But outside of that, I mean, not a lot of guys have really been great or kind of slowing down this season. Like, Dozier just continues to look really bad at the plate. Miguel Sano, yeah, he's got some pop, but there's other third basemen I'd rather go with tonight. It's probably just Rosario for me.
It would be Rosario. I don't hate Dozier just because, like, if you look at where Keller is placing his pitches this season, like, basically, like, 15% of his pitches are, like, right dead center in the strike zone, and Dozier, a 532 WOBA off pitches, like, dead center in the strike zone. And if you look, like, bottom center, 14% of Keller's pitches are going there. Dozier, another, like, 449. So it would be like Dozier and Rosario for me, and that'd probably be it.
Opposite side of this one, it's another one. Like I don't really have a ton of interest in Romero, but I'm not really picking on him here.
I don't hate using him. Like he's still fairly cheap. Like he's not a guy that's overly expensive. Obviously, Vegas thinks he's gonna get the win. It's probably the best matchup that he's seen this entire season, and he's pitched in some pretty tough matchups, and he's been fine. Like I mean, had a good outing against the Angels. The Cardinals game was good. Seattle was a solid outing. I don't know that he has a ton of strikeout upside, just given that the Royals only striking out like 20% of the time. But as another cheap value like pitcher, I don't necessarily hate him. And obviously, you get the park factor that works in his favor.
Yeah, I mean, it's the strikeout upside I think I'm a little bit worried with, but I kind of can also see maybe he, obviously that slider's been very solid this year, 45% whiff rate on it. He's throwing about 27% of the time. Good high velocity fastball, high velocity sinker. I mean, not a lot of these Royals do really match up well with him. 7,800. I don't know. I'm still kind of maybe looking at some other options, but I don't mind it.
Yeah, I don't either. The only guy that I'd really be even looking at here against him would be like a cheap John Jay, who has just he's been absolutely raking recently. And it's not like he's putting up like huge games, but he's a guy who's getting on base a couple times per game. And I mean, he has double digit like fantasy points on DraftKings and 3 straight. Just a cheap, like good cash game option because he's going to give you generally some sort of production.
Yeah, he's only 3,300. What, I think he had, what, three doubles earlier this series.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, don't mind him. Coors game here: San Francisco versus Colorado. Derek Holland on the hill. We were talking a little bit before about some of these cheaper right-handed bats. Like obviously Arenado and Story are more expensive, but the rest of them are just too cheap.
Yeah, I mean, you if you want to roll out Arenado and Story, feel free. Like they're expensive bats here. Like Story 4,800 is probably the most interesting one for me. We know both of them absolutely rake against right-handed pitching, and we know Derek Holland really struggles against, or they rake against left-handed pitching. Holland struggles against right-handed hitters. So both great options. I'm leaning more towards the Noel Cuevas and the Ian Desmonds here as value options. Like Cuevas is 3,200 on DraftKings, super cheap option. He'll be in the lineup. You're going to get, like I said, Ian Desmond, who has actually been hitting really, really well recently as a solid option. And then you're going to get like Daniel Castro potentially in there and like hopefully Chris Iannetta as a value option. Like I'm leaning more towards the value Rockies bats, which I think they'll probably be pretty popular here.
Yeah, I think so too. And like you said, I mean, Story really stands out. Like he's a guy that I like in this spot. Good against sinkers. The contact rate's actually up against sinkers, 87%. Got 274 ISO, and that sinker for Holland is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. I expect this to be a relatively, I think, short outing for Holland. And I never hate Blackman against lefties either.
No, I don't dislike him in this spot against the lefty. I mean, he hits lefties really well. 217 ISO, 395 WOBA against him. It's still it's a good spot for him. And interesting note on Cuevas, like we're dealing with a very small sample, but like 446 WOBA and 42% hard contact rating against sinkers, pretty solid numbers.
Yeah, 3,200 projected hit second tonight. Sign me up. San Francisco side things, a bit of a letdown last night outside of like Longoria. I don't know how much I'm going to be really attacking Gray. You know, it would be with the lefties. I don't know how much I'm going to be paying 5-5 for Brandon Melt. I do think Crawford's an interesting pivot though, away from Story.
Yeah, Crawford's definitely someone that I could get behind, and if I'm going to use anyone here, it's the lefties. So just keep an eye on who gets in that lineup. Like, I don't hate the idea of like a cheap Pablo Sandoval in the spot. Like, 3,200 on DraftKings, decent numbers against right-handed pitching. Actually, has been hitting pretty darn well. He would be the guy that I would probably be looking at here.
Yeah, because I mean, really, if this was a different slate with not a lot of pitching, I'd maybe entice like John Gray.
I would maybe consider it, but like in that same price range, I can get Stripling for a little bit cheaper, and I just don't see it. Even though Stripling's going to be mega chalk, like I just don't see a reason to pivot off of him.
Right, it's just different slate because I mean he does have the strikeout stuff, and we know this Giants team is just horrendous against sliders.
Yeah.
So next game here, you got Tampa Bay and Oakland. Sean Manaea versus Nathan Eovaldi. I've been trying to get the bounce back Manaea game. I tried it last time out, and it didn't go particularly well. I don't know, man. I'm worried about him, but the upside is there here.
The upside's there. The risk is also there. And I talked a little bit about him in the cheat sheets. He's been absolutely just abysmal. Like at least 4 earned runs and 5 starts this month. The Rays are a strikeout-prone offense, but they also do hit the ball pretty darn hard against left-handed pitching. It's a very risky spot for Manaea. If you're trying to be different in tournaments and you want to pivot off the chalk Stripling option, I think Manaea is an okay tournament option, but like the floor is pretty low for him tonight.
Yeah, it is. And, I worry about a couple of these bats here. Like Daniel Robertson's a guy that just he stands out quite a bit. Obviously, like guys like CJ Cronin. We saw Tampa put a couple over the fence last night pretty early.
Yeah, they had three straight. They had three straight homers. You had Crone, Ramos, and Wendell go back to back to back, to back to back to back to back with home runs. And I actually put. I think we talked about it yesterday. I think Tampa is a good value stack here. Like Wilson Ramos, 3,300, excellent numbers against left-handed pitching. You mentioned Daniel Robertson. Owns like a 42% hard contact rating and an 85% contact rate against Manaya's four-seam fastball. Johnny Fields, an excellent option here. And even like the guys, the Arroyos and the Willie Adames and those guys, like I have interest in them.
Yeah, I do too. And guys that are going to probably go overlooked once again, as the Rays usually do.
Yeah, I guess Adames got optioned back, so that kind of sucks.
I think they only pulled him up
for Wendell's paternity leave.
yeah. On the other side of this one, Nathan Eovaldi making his first start in 2018. This is a guy who's been injured for quite a bit lately. Prior years, he's been a guy to target lefties against. I do think you can take a couple shots here, but there's not that many lefties that I have interest in outside of like Joyce and maybe like a Matt Olson in GPPs.
Yeah, the biggest issue here is Evaldi's a guy that just throws like a very, very, very fast four-seam fastball, like averages like 97 miles an hour, touches 98, 99 at times. And there aren't a lot of guys that hit that pitch very well from the Oakland side of this game. Like if you go look at some of the contact rates and the whiff numbers, it's not terribly appealing. If I'm looking at anyone like Matt Joyce, 80% contact rates, 397 xWOBA, 38% hard contact rate, but only a 105 ISO. He's the only guy outside of Jonathan Lucroy that has a contact rate over at or above 80% against the pitch. So I think it's an interesting spot for Eovaldi for like a tournament option, tournament arm, a guy that I don't expect to go too terribly deep, maybe 70 pitches, but I don't know. I'm looking at maybe Matt Joyce, and that's pretty much it from the Athletics side of this game.
Yeah, it's not too appealing on that Oakland side. Moving on here, Miami, San Diego. You got Jose Urena versus Clayton Richard. Richard's interesting if you want to pivot. Like, it's not a bad spot for him at home. I don't hate using him in GBPs here.
No, I really don't. Like he's a guy who's been pitching pretty deep into games. And this Marlins offense, not like a terribly good offense, even against left-handed pitching. Like you're gonna get a lot of ground balls. And he's already a ground ball pitcher. Like against lefties this season, they have like a 46% ground ball rate. And their ISO went up. Their team ISO was like 0.020 the other night. It's now up to 0.091 against left-handed pitching. So a lot of ground balls and not a lot of power. So if you want to roll him out, he's fine. Decent spot for him. I don't even hate Urena in this spot. Like I know it's crazy, but like I think Urena might be a viable option here too.
Yeah, too. Like both these offenses, obviously, ones that we like to target. Urena's 6'3", one of the few cheaper pitchers that stretched out a little bit as well. I don't hate him here in this spot. Like I don't think he's as bad as some of his numbers indicate. Hard contact to lefty scares me a little bit. Dating back to last year, 37%, but a guy who will throw some of that off-speed stuff quite a bit, and that's stuff that the Padres don't hit particularly well. He's got a decent fastball. GPPs, I don't mind him.
Yeah, I agree.
So, any batters here?
Don't hate like a one-off of like JT Realmuto or a couple of the Padres lefties, but not really looking at them tonight. Tomorrow will be the Padres stack night.
Who's pitching tomorrow?
They have Wei and Chen tomorrow.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, and Renfro's back.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dodgers Phillies next year. Ross Stripling versus Zach Eflin. Chalk Stripling is we're going to call him here. Don't hate it. I never hate Chalk Stripling.
It's just one of those spots like the sites did like a big injustice by not pricing these guys up, and like Stripling is going to be mega chalk. He's 7,500 on FanDuel. Bringing 7,300 on DraftKings. The Phillies are terrible. They strike out a ton. Stripling has been just completely dominant as a starter. I just don't see a reason to fade him in the spot. I don't care what his ownership is going to be.
I don't either. It is a good spot for him. Guy who throws that slider quite a bit. He's accurate with the same stuff as we talked about last time. I expect obviously a very solid outing again, and at that price, like it's just too cheap, like you said.
Yeah, it really is. And like nothing really suggests that anything is going to change for him. Like his swinging strike rate dating back to last season, 11%. That's pretty much in line with this 26% strikeout rate. Like 317 xFIP doesn't suggest a ton of regression here, not giving up hard contact. And this Phillies offense is striking out just so freaking much, like 25% of the time against righties dating back to last season. It's just such a good spot.
And he's so good against lefties. Like he's like borderline elite numbers against lefties.
Yeah.
So yeah, not a guy that I want to target here at all. Like I don't have any one-offs either to consider for the Phillies.
No, I don't either.
So other side of this one, Eflin, you got to be excited about that last start to finally see Eflin F himself.
I've been pretty excited. Like outside of the one giant start, like the rest of his starts have not been that great, and we're getting the real Zach Eflin. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, the 359, WOBA to lefties, 310 ISO, 40% hard contact, 60% fly ball is more the Eflin that we know and love. I don't hate some Giants or Dodgers bats here. The lefties, if Jock Peterson gets a lineup, he's interesting value. Max Muncy's been a guy who's been on fire, still fairly cheap. The problem is he's at two spots that maybe I'd like to look elsewhere. But I mean, late slate, or if you want to get contrarian, Muncy's a guy you can consider.
Yeah, I wish because he was like second base outfield a couple days ago.
Yeah.
I wish he was that again, but like he is still such a good option here against right-handed pitching. Just excellent numbers. 274 ISO, 351 WOBA. He owns a 481 xWOBA against Eflin's four-seamer, along with like a 43% hard contact rates, a 337 WOBA, 190 ISO split against like the two-seam sinker. Really, really good spot for him. But like Grandal, excellent spot behind the dish for Grandal. Even Bellinger, who's been struggling, and Jock Peterson, as you mentioned, really, really good options here.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've gone to some Dodgers bats. I don't mind going there tonight.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately I just hope we're not reminded why we haven't been using Dodgers bats.
Yeah, it's true. Last game of the night here, Texas and Seattle. James Paxton versus Matt Moore. I love James Paxton again. It's just so hard not to. Going up against a team that he should just really go to town against. And you get a little bit of discount as well. Like if he continues to stay at these prices on slates where you have the 13, 14K pitchers, I just feel like Paxton's the easy call.
Yeah, it's play Paxton one for me. Like talking about a guy, just massive strikeout upside, ability to pitch deep into games. Facing Rangers offense that is just absolutely terrible. I just don't. There's no way I'm fading Paxton in this spot.
No, and should get plenty of run support on the other side as well.
Yes, he should, because they face Matt Moore, who owns a 7.99 ERA in 9 starts and 8.76 ERA in his last 3 starts.
That's not good.
No.
So let's find a bat that we don't like against Matt Moore. Like, I feel like that might be the easier route to take here.
Gordon Beckham, Andrew Romine.
There we go. You have it. Because, Ryan Healy, a cheap first base option. He's 3,300. Guy who's, clobbered left-handers. I don't mind. I don't even hate Kyle Seager with a little lefty on lefty.
Kyle Seager is one of my best favorite options here, because Moore has been really bad against lefties. 256 ISO, 446 WOBA allowed to them dating back to last season. And Seager owns a 190 ISO, 322 WOBA against left-handed pitching, and then you get the 270 ISO against Moore's fastball, if you want to call it that. Yeah, it's a good spot for him.
Yeah, it really is. And obviously you have like the Mitch Hanigers and Nelson Cruz are very relatively cheap. I don't hate like a Gene Segura leading off. He matches up pretty well against that fastball as well. 418 well with 200 ISO. He was back in the lineup last night, and then you like Heredia, like another cheap outfield option you can use. He's 3-1.
Even Denard Span, like, is in play here. Don't forget about him. Like, just because there's a lefty on lefty, like, he may still be in the lineup, and he's still an option to consider.
Yeah, I mean 381 WOBA against lefties this year.
Yeah.
So, home run calls. Who do you got?
Kurt Suzuki and Kyle Seager.
I'm going Ryan Healy and Matt Adams.
I dig it.
So for us, we won't be here tomorrow. A little bit of traveling going on our part, well, my part. But everything as usual will be up on the site, and we'll be back Friday morning.
Good luck tonight.